Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first DEI conversation of the 30% Club Malaysia for 2022. We have an exciting agenda today to help companies elevate investability, something that we all pursue and we all desire in the business world. But before we get into juicy conversation with our panelists this morning, let me set the stage for the 30% Club. I think as Noel has mentioned and the video has also captured, the 30% Club is a global business campaign, and it is designed to inspire companies to make informed decisions about diversity, equity, and inclusivity, or DEI for short. DEI on their boards and in their senior management teams. In Malaysia, the chapter was established only in 2015, and the founding members and passionate advocates of the 30% Club, they are the people who have had the vision, the foresight, and really the gumption to talk about bringing more women into the boardroom. Without them, as Noah has mentioned, we may not be having this conversation today. The good news from 2015 is that we have made great progress in Malaysia since. Women now make up 26.5% of the board seats in Malaysia's top 100 listed companies. That is up from just 15% in 2015 when we were first established. The not so good news is that 25%, or 1 out of 4 of all PLCs in Bursa still have no women on their boards, and it is 2022. But let's cut to the chase, the running thematic for today's conversation. Our position is that good DEI equals to good ESG equals to better investability. Now, the facts are on our side and creates a compelling business case. Malaysian companies with at least 1/3 women representation in their boardrooms correlate with an average of 38% higher return on equity than boards with no women representation. In January 22, Bursa Malaysia has made it a requirement for all listed companies to have at least one woman on the board by June 2023. For companies with market capitalization above 2 billion ringgit, the cutoff was at the end of 2021, is even earlier. The requirement is to be met by 1st September of this year. So the big question really is this tokenism? Is it box ticking or actually building better investability? Again, in my view, the facts are on our side. 40% of total global wealth is held by women. 2/3 of global household spending is controlled by women. And women are 2 times more likely to consider ESG in their investments. So in short, your investors, local and global, they know the facts and they know what informed decisions should look like. And so that brings us back to the mission of the 30% Club, which is fairly simple. It is really to bring these facts of the business case that diversity is an asset to the marketplace. And this morning, we are joined by 2 CEOs from 2 parts of the corporate spectrum, one with global roots and the other built in Malaysia around families. Both strong allies in championing DEI at their own respective organizations, whereby both Berjaya and Digi have more than 30% women on their boards, with Digi being the only Malaysian company featured in Refinitiv's top 100 most diverse and inclusive companies. Berjaya, while known to be a family business, has more than 30% women on boards across its 4 entities. And so this morning, we're definitely intrigued to know more on the how, the why, and most importantly, the stories of both their experiences in being an ally for the 30% campaign. So let me invite Albern Murty, CEO of Digi Telecommunications, and Jalil Rasheed, Group CEO of Berjaya Corporation, into the room. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. And let's get to it. As a diversity ally, how has bromance and bromanship evolved in your respective organizations to create a more inclusive workplace? Maybe I start off, I'll let you kick off, Albern.
You know, Amy, you didn't even allow us to say good morning to you or good afternoon to you, but hi, and thank you for having us. But you know, one part of the bromance is actually we hand over to the next panel. So I would actually say, Jalil, why don't you go first?
Yes, I think it involves changing our behavior towards, the kind of words that we use. And also, I think, there's this big topic around unconscious biasness, which I'm happy to go through later. And I think we need to kind of move away from making these sort of complex corporate decisions in a social setting. Typically, how even women are appointed on boards. When I was a fund manager, I used to ask this question to companies: how do you actually appoint people onto the board? They said, well, the golf mate or social friends and everything, and that was how decisions were made, really. So I think we need to kind of evolve that. It's okay to kind of have these names coming in from various parts. I think there needs to be kind of a structured way towards how we kind of analyze that. And I think when it comes to all these sort of bromance and everything, I think it needs to be a lot more inclusive. Yeah. When I was in Singapore, we actually my American firm had a Invesco Women's Network, to kind of have a platform where people can be a lot more together, share experiences and everything, and that really helped. We made sure that people, when they go out for social settings and drinks and everything, they're doing it together. It's quite difficult to tell people, oh, you can't use the word bro at work, but I think it was a lot of education that needs to come in. I guess that's where I as a leader need to come in, and the choice of words that I use at town halls, in discussions, and even backing down certain things, if it's set out in meetings, and that's quite important.
Albern, progressive telco.
So Amy, thanks. Jalil, very good points. I think one of the things it's about just making sure that we treat everyone equally, Amy.
Yeah.
The whole point of DEI is making sure that you don't sort of create an environment where you start to pick and choose topics. It should really, if a company is good, if a company really needs to stop and think whether who should I invite, and whether it's whether it's a diverse person, a different gender person, that by itself shows that there is a problem. And I think when you go through that sort of thing in any organization, then you really need to stop as management and a group of an organization and rethink and say, we have a problem. I think first is acknowledging that there is a problem in this. So for me at least, I think it's about making sure that everybody just has a mind that just says we have to be equal when we treat and make decisions. And we need to make sure that we remove all biasness to whatever we are trying to perceive at.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good segue, Albern, to biases, right? Which we know are both conscious and unconscious, and where the lack of diversity, particularly within organizations, is likely to lead to what we call groupthink and also blind spots. So have you witnessed, have you been subjected to, or have you yourself also partly contributed to biased behavior in organizations? And what could you do differently?
Yeah, so Amy, it's very possible, right? And I think I might have subconsciously done or said something which for a while may have been sort of made someone else think was Albern being biased with that comment. But it goes back to the culture of the organization. You will never get it perfect, or you'll never get it right from day one. But you need to build that culture where people are comfortable to give you that feedback. I think that's really what we should be focused on when you talk about biasness and removing those biasness. It's about making sure that the culture of the organization is solid enough that anybody in the organization level can come to you and say, that was a little bit strange comment, boss. If you don't create that culture in the company, there is no way that whatever you try and do, whether it's 30, 40, 50, 60%, or whether you really adopt the DEI and have it on all your walls in your buildings as you walk into your office, it doesn't really matter. So that's really for me very important, Amy. Maybe Jalil wants to comment.
Yeah, I guess we've all been at some point guilty about it, right? Anyone who says that they've not been consciously biased is probably not telling the truth. I think it's sometimes we say things and we don't realize it. But I perfectly agree with Albern that it's a culture thing, right? You can't have you can't have SOPs and frameworks and everything and expect people to follow it. People must feel it and must live it, the culture, and they must take a step back and ask themselves, am I judging this candidate perhaps at an interview wrongly? Am I judging this based on a photo that I'm seeing on the CV? And those sort of things. And I've experienced that myself many times. Some of my colleagues may make a conscious decision based on just looking at the CV. What schools they go to, or how they look like and all that. There's certain things from a HR perspective that you can do. You can remove photos from CVs, you can do gender neutral panels and everything. It'll all be pointless if people don't live that culture.
Jalil, it's quite funny, Amy. Jalil raised a good point. So one of the things that we should do, and one of the things that we commonly do, is to ensure that you make sure the organization understands that you don't accept these sort of behaviors, right? So as leaders, you really need to show up in some of these places. You need to attend some of those interviews, which people will say, boss, why are you even interviewing these candidates, right? You need to break that sort of hierarchical level. You need to sort of shake it up a little bit. Otherwise, people will always feel that, you don't walk the talk on the top management and even the board. So it's very important to establish that, and then to make it really natural, right? So when I say culture, it really has to come naturally. That's really what we do in the company.
Yeah. So I hear both of you, and nevertheless, in Malaysia, where only 10% of businesses in Malaysia are run by a woman CEO or MD. So it's kind of a bit intriguing. What is the real issue here? Are there really two planets in the workplace, Venus and Mars, right? And what would be your advice to companies, right, who are trying to address these challenges? There are still 230 companies out there listed on Bursa Malaysia who have no women on boards. So how do we look at it systematically and structurally?
Yeah, Amy, maybe I go first. Maybe it's a little bit of my upbringing, but I grew up with very strong women in my household. Not my mom, but even my grandmother. She ran the entire household, and she came from a very humble background. She was running a farm, and and while the husband ran some work in the estates, and she ran everything. And if she could run everything and finances, and some of the facts that was being read out by your team, the team just now, you can just think that, imagine if you unleash opportunities out there for anybody that and any diverse background, gender, whatever, to really just build these things for us. I have to say that coming with 50% women on the board, coming with 50% women in across C and C-1 levels in the organization, I would not have done it any other way. It's amazing, the diverse information, the diverse wealth of knowledge, the heart-mind usage in business. You can clearly see the benefits of it. If not, we will all look and do and talk the same, and you will just be patting each other on the back and not really thinking beyond what we do today as normal teams, right? So for me, it is extremely important that we really need to look at, I hope the 200 plus companies have representatives here today, because that number needs to dramatically come down. And look at the companies that women are running. It's amazing. Look at the company you're running, Amy. I mean, there's so many talents out there that are doing great work. We had a review of talents recently in the company, and I have to say, succession planning on the number of women that are stepping into succession planning for C-levels are amazing.
Yeah, just to add to what Albern has to say, and I think when it comes to getting women to be involved, I think in the past there's been also a bit of a one-dimensional kind of approach towards getting the women on the board, right? And for example, I think from a lot of my discussions would be that if you're a consumer company, we must get someone with consumer experience, and that whittles down the talent pool considerably. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you're going to be on a board, you need to be asking the right questions. You don't need to be a consumer specialist knowing how everything works, right? You just need to be asking, why are we doing this? Is this the right thing to do? So I think that is an opportunity to kind of broaden the spectrum of female talents on the board. So I think there needs to be a rethink about, you know, how we kind of look at that from an experience perspective and everything.
Well, the one comment that I would really like to share is that whenever boards actually talk about diversity, and when they actually try to create the profile for the woman candidate, for some strange reason, right, the woman candidate has to be the best accountant, the best human capital person, able to understand technology, right, be, you know, the chief sustainability person, you know, and do a whole myriad of other things, right? So, but yet when you know, when the final decision comes, they say, well, the decision was based on merit. So how do we, you know, say for example, Albern, right? How have the conversations in your boardrooms been shaped? Have they been different by having more women, for example?
Yeah, I can see what you said and the comments running on the side on the chatter box. So I'm going to say that that obviously whoever wrote that job scope was a male, Amy, and shame on him. But at least for Digi board, I just want to go back to the way I started. I started about the culture of how important is it to set the context and the culture of the company. That culture needs to be also within the board, because it's not just about gender. It's not just about board. It's about CXO levels. It's about C levels. It's about C-1. It's about the pool of talent that is coming to fulfill the needs of the next 200 Malaysian companies that need to get more women in the board and in management. We have that challenge in Digi. So, you know, even on the C level, yes, I have women, and we have had women in the past, you know, between 1 and 2 women at any point in time. It is hard. But it's not because there is no talent. It is hard because there are many different things. When you look at diversity and being inclusive and equal management, you also need to look at, do you have the right policies to support the various changes that you're going to incorporate? Do you have the same expectations? And that was what you're talking about, job description expectations across the board. Because if you don't, it's not going to work. Amy, you're spot on. And really, it starts from the board, but sometimes it really needs to start from management. If management pushes the board and pushes upwards and downwards in the organization, I think that's really when you'll start to see the needle move, Amy. And then you know, we are building pools of talent. You know, Jalil, all of us are building pools of talent. We just need to make sure that there are sufficient women talent that are willing to now step up. And then the board, women in all the boards need to help as well, play a role to bring up the topic of diversity in their own boards, to be bold enough to talk about it, to be bold enough to challenge those job scopes and those expectations.
So Jalil, if it is both what Albern is trying to say, it is structural and systematic. It has to be done top down and bottom up, right? Top from the top and your corporate culture. So what the other aspect of it is also women themselves, right? Women candidates themselves, who quite often, when approached for a C-suite conversation, tends to say, oh, maybe I'm not ready, right? Instead of saying, yes, that's me, right? So how would you, because you do have a lot of engagements across the spectrum, how do you, how would you coach? How would you help mentor or even sponsor women to make sure they have that confidence?
So when I joined Berjaya almost a year ago, and we were looking at our board, and we needed some of them were on the verge of retiring. So as we were looking for new board members, we spoke to a number of people. We have a database. There were one of two female board members whom we really liked, and said, well, I'm not sure, it's a big group and everything. And I spent a lot of time trying to convince them, no, you can do it, right? You don't need to know about 15 different companies or sectors. You should. And personally, for me, in my today we've got about 57% of our board are females. 50% of our senior management are female. 49% of our total workforce, about 10,000 of them are females as well. So I think in that sense, I think we've in a way naturally been built a kind of a culture where we don't really see male and female. We've kind of done that quite well. But I think I agree there is that difference between, I guess, the male and female, and the males would put their hands out immediately and say, yes, that's me. I'll take that job. Females need a bit more of coaching. And my previous job, 3 or 4 of our females are really, really needed to be convinced that they could do the job, and that we would give them the sort of support and platform for them to do their job. And the support and platform, I think you need to understand the individuals personally as well. Is that not everyone is scared that they can't do the job. Some of them are worried about time commitment, about travel commitments. So I think it's the ability to put a comfort and a platform there to say it's okay. You can have flexi working arrangements or doing that sort of thing. So I think we need to move out from a chock-a-block approach about how we approach that, and be very conscious about it. And I think that's where there's this whole topic of male allyship comes in, right? We need to be quite supportive. I'm a big fan of male mentorships. I purposely pair certain females who are on the verge of being promoted to a C-suite with a male, so that they kind of understand how each other operates, and also it's a way for the males to also break their biasness as well, trying to understand what they go through, and hoping that over time this will permeate as a culture across the organization.
Yeah. Amy, if I just add on this point, I think it really comes back to the company. If the company is not willing to actually make this difficult choice and directionally make it happen, it's not going to happen. First of all, whether it's gender or whether it's any part of diversity, race, religion, culture, ethnicity, whatever you want to put it down, it's really important that the company really believes in that. I mean, I have a board today. We have 50% women in across management in the top 50. We have 50% in the board, and still I have conversations with my board members about diversity, and they're looking at they're moving on to the next diversity. It's not just about gender, it's about the mixture of people in the company. Why is it important? Because the bigger mix you have, you basically represent the country and the consumers that you're serving. Simple. And Salika, your point just now, yes, I saw your chat. I said, Albern, I agree with you, but it's the male members in the board. So I just want to clarify there's two parts here. One is the female members need to make sure that they are inspiring and they keep helping these women grow. And then the male need to remove all biasness and make sure that they're not the ones writing these job descriptions that Amy described just now, right? But one part of women that I want to just also put down, Amy, is they have a natural instinct in at least our society to now do what Jalil is thinking about, which is family, right? And that's not a bad thing. But the companies need to be able to accommodate that. And I think that's really what we can do. It's not that if a woman chooses to stay home, that it's and lose a C-level, that it's a bad thing. Not at all, because this same lady is super inspiring what she does every time, and she can come back and in the future when the kids are grown up. So that sort of mindset we need to do. My own wife, Amy, did that. My own wife, parked her career aside for the last 20 years, and looked after our kids because she wanted that choice. So you have these cycles. Companies need to adapt to those cycles.
Yeah, so you kind of provided that avenue into inclusivity, Albern. We've got fast and furious comments and questions from the chat box. Great, thank you so much, everybody. The one thing that I picked up, which is interesting, somebody said, diversity is just being invited to the party. Inclusivity is to dance together. And so there's been a lot of comments. So then how do we get a great playlist, right? So maybe for Jalil, right? So if inclusivity is the big playlist, one of the questions is that part of the reason women are reluctant to take board positions is because they feel that they may be in the minority, perhaps even providing a different point of view than the majority of male directors, which can be daunting, right? So this is where, just to plug in, the 30% club is not some magical number. It is just a kind of a first checkpoint that we want to inspire everyone towards. So maybe Jalil, that lone voice is often, something no one wants to take on, right? So any kind of rejoinder to that?
I think that's where the support system comes in, right? From the chairman of the board or other board members, and the CEO as well. And I spend a lot of time with my board members, trying to keep them up to date with the company affairs as much as possible, so that they're a bit more confident and inspired when they go into board meetings. and we make sure that we give them all that necessary support. Try to help them as much as we can. Because I think it is daunting for anybody taking on a first board position. They may be minority and everything, and that's where I think the support system of the other board members comes in as well. Again, goes down to culture. How badly does the company want to kind of encourage this participation on the board? Is it just a box ticking exercise, or whether it is something that they really want to do? And I'm against having women just for quota purposes, right? I think that's they bring such amazing insights onto the board, different experience level, different insights, and we should be looking at it from that perspective rather than to look at it as, oh, this is a female who's a lone voice on the board, but look at it as a comment rather than it's coming from a female. That's the conversation that we try very hard to have on all our boards.
Jalil, just to stay with you for a bit, right? Being a former portfolio manager, you know how money flows and money talks, right? And congratulations for a very significant turnaround of Berjaya Corporation for Q2. So the question perhaps is, are investors watching? Should people be very mindful that investors are watching how decisions are made?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think more so now than it was perhaps maybe 10, 15 years ago. But even as a portfolio manager, even 10 years ago, we started already asking questions about people on the board. Have they been on the board too long? What about females? What about different experience level? But it's more so now. You see there's a huge influx of money coming in from funds that want ESG focus, and one of the things they've been looking at is the board composition. So if you don't do it, I think either regulations will force you to do it, or the investors may punish you for not doing it. So I think it's coming from all angles. So I think companies cannot afford to not want to do it. And I don't need to repeat this. I think a lot of the stats are there that companies are much more diverse, do much better. And again, I have to emphasize that the board makeup must be people who can ask the right questions rather than people who are asking trying to get involved operationally, right? And that's where you get that nice diversity of thought. Not people who are asking all the questions that management should be doing.
Albern, last word from you.
Yeah, so I think it's okay to have a 30% ambition. Amy, I think it's okay. We are starting this journey. It's just like any targets a company would do. You would definitely put a target to it. So I don't think we need to justify why 30 and not 40, or why not 20. I think let's move away from that, because we shouldn't get caught in that discussion. I think, Amy, in a couple of years, we'll be saying, please keep 30% men on the board. I think, that's what's going to happen, really. So fingers crossed. But I think, to Jalil's quick question about investors, when Jalil was in his previous portfolio, we were fortunate enough to have them as a major shareholder. Yeah. And that's one of the questions they asked us. I was sitting there with his team and they asked us that. And I'm so proud that they did. And in fact, whenever I have an analyst call in my quarterly results, we actually talk about responsible business, and we actually talk about diversity and things that we're doing. And investors need to pay even more attention in Malaysia so that the 200 plus companies feel a little bit of urgency to address these issues and start moving on this space. Amy, there's one more point. It's not just about investors. I really believe that the one that is going to move the needle on this is consumers. When consumers start picking brands that pay attention to sustainability, responsibility, diversity, DEI, that's really when you're going to get the pressure on these companies. And it's going to happen soon, Amy. You see that in your portfolio in Maybank. Jalil, you see that, I see that. I think that's really going to be a key must do, but a definite nice to have for organizations.
Oh, I couldn't ask for a more succinct DEI call to action. So, gentlemen, both Jalil and Albern, you have been great sports in helping to bring the business case of gender balance and diversity to our audience. Thank you very much. To wrap up our conversation, here are the three things I hear from both of you. Firstly, women may be from Venus and men from Mars, but we all revolve around the same sun. And in today's world, that sun is perhaps ESG. Secondly, there is truly a business case for diversity of boards and senior management, but it does require great and systematic attention to execution detail. And lastly, investors are watching and ready to deploy their funds and voting rights to walk the DEI talk. So thank you again, and keep taking the lead. I now hand back to Noel.